Greetings, founders. Welcome to Feel the Boot, the science of startups. Today, I want to talk about the art and science of writing headlines for your pitch deck. And I got this idea after I watched a presentation by Eric Bahn, who's a general partner and co-founder at Hustle Fund, talking about how to put together a deck to send to venture capitalists, and specifically looking at how to write those headlines. So I want to talk today about some of his advice and my own thoughts about how to approach this and why writing headlines is so important to the success of your deck. Hi, I'm Lance Cottrell, and I'm here to help you along your entrepreneurial journey, because I know how difficult that road can be. I've walked it myself. I started my own company, but I've also been on the other side of the table. I've been an angel investor for many years. I mentor and advise numerous companies, and I see the mistakes that are out there. I've made a lot of them myself, and I want to help you avoid those. I also know what a vertical learning curve being a founder can be. There's an almost infinite number of things that you're supposed to know right from the get-go, and almost no one has that background. At Feel the Boot, I'm trying to provide all of that knowledge in an easy to digest form so that you can understand what's going on, why you're making the decisions you're making. And because I've got a science background, I don't just want to give you recipes, I want to make sure that you really develop an intuition about why the decisions you make work, rather than just instructions on which ones to make. So you can do the right thing regardless of the specific circumstances you find yourself in. Eric's video has a wonderful discussion of the persona of a typical VC that you may be pitching. And at the end of it, the punchline was that in general, they don't read pitch decks. They skim them. At best, they're just looking at the headlines, flipping through each one of the pages before they decide whether to set up a meeting. And that's not exactly my experience of angel investors. I tend to think that most of us are more from an operator background than a finance or analyst background. And I think most of us will at least look through the deck if we're interested. But just like anyone else, we're probably going to do a first pass just skimming quickly to decide whether we want to read the deck before we consider taking our time to set up a phone call or engage more deeply. The core message of Eric's presentation was that the headlines on your slide should basically contain all of the important information in your deck. If someone just read the headlines, they should know what they need to decide. Is this something of interest to me? Does it meet my core thesis? Is this a company that I'd want to follow up with? And he suggests doing that by having each one of those headlines be a complete sentence. So not some little fragment, not just a couple of words, but a real sentence that actually provides the content about what that slide is telling you. And he suggests that those should read like a paragraph. So if you just flip through the deck and read each one of those headlines in order, it would make sense. It would be comprehensible. And at the end of that, you'd know something about the company, ideally enough to make that initial snap judgment of, is this someone I want to follow up with? Or is this something that's just kind of going to get round filed and we'll send off that no email quickly? Now, I've never seen that particular advice before, to make it sentences and to make those sentences flow together. But it really resonated with me because I generally have a big problem with slides that have the problem, solution, market, competition, traction, as the headline, just that word. And it's because I guess I learned this from my grandfather when I was quite young, and he loved to show family slideshows of vacations. He'd made them for years. He actually was invited places to go show pictures of his slides. And one of the things he'd said is, when you're doing this and you put up, say, a picture of yourself in front of the Eiffel Tower, don't say, this is me in front of the Eiffel Tower, because we can see that. Right? It's obvious. I know who you are. I know that's the Eiffel Tower. It's you standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. Why are you giving me stupid information? Instead, you want to tell me something about this. Like, this was the hottest day they'd had in 10 years. We were dying hiking around Paris. Or, I got pickpocketed in this park 5 minutes after this picture was taken. Or, there are umpteen tons of steel inside the Eiffel Tower, but if you melted it down, it would only be a couple inches deep. Amazingly efficient structure, right? Say something about it. Don't just tell me what the thing is. And so this applies to slides, where don't tell me this is the problem slide. if you're explaining what the problem is, it will be obvious to me that it is the problem slide. Just tell me what the problem is, as Eric would say, in a full sentence. So before we move on to some specific examples of how to do this kind of headline writing, I want to ask you to do me a favor. If you're still watching this video at this point, I assume you're getting some value out of it. And if you are, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor. It's very simple. Just like this episode on whatever platform you're consuming it, whether it's a podcast or on YouTube, wherever, give it a like, because it makes a big difference. It tells the algorithm that this is the kind of content that people like you are interested in. And I'm trying to reach founders like you, other people with early stage startups that need help and advice. It makes a big difference to me. It's the whole reason I'm doing this project. Now, if you've listened to dozens of these or watched all my videos, then maybe if you could take the next step, like, subscribe, ring the bell, maybe comment, share it on social media out to your circle of friends and other founders, that would also be really helpful. But just the like makes a giant difference. Thanks. So let's look at this idea in action. And I want to start with my favorite pitch deck example. From Calvin and Hobbes, it's Spaceman Spiff and his brand new Freem drive. And he's got a new Starship company that he's trying to get funding for. So the classic way you usually see these kinds of things presented is, first off, the problem slide, with a slide called Problem, and maybe a description of that rockets are slow. And then your next slide is Solution. And your solution is, we build much faster rockets. And then the text of the slide has some backup support for that. And then market. Companies need rockets that can reach other planets to exploit their resources, because that's who we're going to be selling this to. And then we've got competition. We've got Elon Musk and, with SpaceX, and you've got NASA, Blue Origin, all these other companies, but they suck, right? They can't get beyond Earth orbit, really, and we haven't sent anyone to the moon in 30 years or more now. So that's your competition there. Your traction, let's say you've already built the rocket, you've been tootling around the galaxy for a while, you've got some people lined up in the pipeline, so that's your traction. And then your team, and you've got pictures of each person on your team, the CEO, Spaceman Spiff, maybe the CEO, Hobbes, the tiger, who's the voice of reason, right? And that's fine, that's very functional as a set of slides, but it doesn't skim well, right? When you read it, each one is sort of an individual fact. It's problem, slow rocket, solution, fast rocket, right? This doesn't sort of tie together. Each is separated out and doesn't tell a coherent narrative. And I think narrative is really important. In addition to replacing these single word headlines on each one of these slides, I decided to have some fun and spiffed up the graphics a little bit as well. But let's take a look at those. So instead of problem, we might say, and I'm going to go read for a sec so I'm getting this exactly right, conventional rockets take over 10,000 years to reach the nearest star. And then the content of the slide sort of shows that calculation and how long it takes and why that's a big deal. Solution, the headline is, Freem Drive enables anyone to explore the galaxy in minutes. Again, the content of the slide then supports that. I've got the picture of the galaxy and it's 15 minutes, and that makes a pretty good case that that's going really fast. We enable resource exploitation of thousands of worlds worth bazillions of dollars. So that's clearly saying, here's what the market is. It's this thousands of worlds. I don't need to say market, right? As soon as you hear that this is about being able to exploit and people are doing this, it's very clear that's what we're talking about. Then we get to the competition. Other space companies can't take humans beyond the Earth orbit and cost billions of dollars. So again, very simple description. Immediately you know I'm now slagging on the competition. That's clearly the competition slide, and I've got the graphic below it that lays out the two axes, that instead of billions of dollars, it's something that you can pay for with your allowance, and instead of just around the Earth, we're covering the entire galaxy, right? Very straightforward, standard, competitive slide, but with a much more readable title. Traction. Our prototype Starship visited dozens of planets over the last 30 days, right? That says we've got something that works, that can go anywhere in the galaxy. This is not some sort of concept on paper. This is not ideaware. And then in the slide below, I flesh that out a little bit and say that it's ready. We've got a pipeline of supervillains that are willing to pay us lots and lots of money. And generally, we haven't killed any test pilots yet. And then finally, we've got the team slide, because we're doing things in the same order. Our founder, Spaceman Spiff, only our founder, Spaceman Spiff, can deliver on this vision. And then a little bit about Spaceman Spiff and COO Hobbs. Now, if I were to read these all together, and I'm going to glance down and do that, it reads as a paragraph. It kind of flows from one to the next. It makes logical sense. So conventional rockets take over 10,000 years to reach the nearest star. Freedom drive enables anyone to explore the galaxy in minutes. We enable resource exploitation of thousands of worlds worth bazillions of dollars. Other space companies can't take humans beyond the Earth's orbit and cost billions of dollars. Our prototype Starship visited dozens of planets over the last 30 days. Only our founder, Spaceman Spiff, can deliver on this vision. Right? That now becomes a really clear statement of why you should think about investing in Spiff Enterprises and getting some of that big Freedom Drive money for your own. Now, while Eric's advice was really focused on read-ahead decks, where you're emailing it in for someone to look at before they take their first meeting with you, I think it really does apply universally. I just don't like those headlines that are telling you, this is what this page is about. Just tell me what the page is about. You don't need to sort of announce that. And you're wasting that prime real estate right up at the top, the first thing that the eye goes to. In fact, Eric's suggestion is that you don't use a deck at all in the meeting. So once someone's read your deck and agreed to talk to you, that you just have a conversation with them like a human being. And personally, I love that approach if you're up for it. It can be more challenging in many cases because you now need to have memorized all your talking points and be able to do them in any random order and steer the conversation to make sure you hit all of those marks. If you feel confident doing that, I think it is, in fact, far more effective than walking through a deck. But if you need to have a deck, you want to have two. I've talked about that a lot, right? One that has all the information that they're going to take and read and make sense by itself, and one that's stripped down for you to deliver. Again, though, I would still use those sentences at the top, have it read in that kind of order, but they're never going to read it end to end because you're delivering it verbally. And I've talked about this in other episodes, you want to be able to go off topic. You want to be able to get random, to go to slides in the back and sort of an appendix, to have conversations, to dive down on things, and then quickly get back onto your core message. I think one big advantage of this approach of using sentences and requiring the sentences to form a paragraph is that it helps enforce a logical organization for your deck. Your slides can't just sort of come in random order because then the story and the paragraph don't really make sense. When the words in each sentence follow each other in a logical progression so that this is a coherent paragraph, the slides and the ideas are logically following each other. Also, when you then put these together and read them off, it may become glaringly obvious when one of these slides isn't in the right spot. And this is actually something I see quite a lot in decks, particularly ones that have been through quite a lot of editing, that they've been worked on over and over. The entrepreneur has been adding slides, removing them, rearranging them, taking advice from all the different advisors that they're talking to. And at some point, the slides will start referring to information that used to come before that slide in the deck, but now either isn't in the deck at all or doesn't happen till later. And so suddenly I get this sentence that comes up. I'm like, wait, what is that referring to? And what is this to do with, or why is this a relevant piece of information here? And when you read it off as sentences, suddenly you go, oh, that was apropos of nothing. I need to make sure that I've got that context in there. And this really works pretty well regardless of the length of your slide deck. You want to be able to just read through the whole thing as a narrative, and then the content exists to support that. So once someone's got the core idea of the slide, which was in the headline, now they can glance down and see the support, understand, oh, here's why that's a valid statement. Here's the supporting information. Here's the other sort of nuance to help me understand that claim about whatever fact it may be. It does not, however, dictate the order of your slides. So we could easily have put the team slide first because Spaceman Spiff's such an amazing guy. We want to open our presentation with that. And so now that needs to be part of the framing device. So we might say something like, Spaceman Spiff, world famous rocket scientist, galactic explorer, and inventor of the Freedom Drive, is the only person who can utterly disrupt the space travel industry. And so that tells people that we are disrupting the space travel industry, and we've got this amazing guy helming the organization. And so each one of the other slides then would be probably slightly reworded to fit within that narrative. So you can tell things in whatever order you want, as long as it makes a coherent story, but this helps you know when you might be going off the rails. Now, Eric goes into a lot more detail about that VC persona. That was some excellent stuff he did there, as well as going into a lot of detail on his thinking around how to do these headlines. Plus, he had a long Q&A because this was a live webinar. I strongly encourage you to head over to that YouTube video. I'll put a card up above and a link down in the description. It's great stuff. Thanks for watching this episode of Fill the Boot. I hope you found it useful and interesting. And if so, you might want to join other founders at the Fill the Boot Founders Alliance. Other people who found this kind of information useful. It's a great resource, a place where you can share your thoughts, bounce ideas off people, get feedback, and listen to other people's journeys as they go down this same path that you're walking right now. If you need some personal boot, I encourage you to go to feeltheboot.com and sign up for our newsletter. Each time I include a link where you can sign up for free coaching sessions with me, exclusive to people who have joined Feel the Boot. And I really do hope you'll do that. I love talking to founders. You guys are some of the coolest, most interesting people because you've chosen to do something extremely difficult. And you're pursuing a vision. You're working hard. You've got passion around what you're doing. You're trying to impose your vision on reality. And people who are doing that are universally interesting and fun to talk to. I also hope you'll come back for the next episode of Fill the Boot. Till then, ciao.